Hey everybody, welcome back to the 56th episode of Taps and Patience, where one of the hosts uses the music to cut off the co-host not only at the end of the podcast, but also at the beginning of the podcast. My name's AJ with Design the Everything, here with Harrison, who was so rudely interrupted a second ago, of
okay.
Precision Ingenuity. Hi Harrison, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm better than that intro was.
Man, I had a long day today, but it was a good day today. What about you?
I was fairly productive today.
Fairly productive. I saw on Instagram that you had some ISO 20 holders. Those
Yes.
things are cute.
So, BT30 tool holder for the people watching the video. BT30 tool holder. ISO 20 tool holder.
Oh my goodness.
They're so cute.
So what ER collet sizes do they come in commonly?
From what I can tell, there are exactly two options for ISO 20 tool holders. And they are ER16 or Rego Power Grip. That's it. That's the only options I found.
Really?
At least of the one side note here, there is a router, a CNC router version of the ISO 20 tool holders that do not work in the Haas tool changer. Those ones have some more options. But for the milling style ISO 20 tool holders, your choices are Power Grip 10 and ER16. And
do those have... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Power Grips are really nice and really expensive. So those were not even an option remotely.
Gotcha. Sorry, before I rudely interrupted you. Drive dogs. Does ISO 20 have drive dogs?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I assume it helps with the high-speed balance, but...
Cool. Interesting. So when are you going to get that machine? When's delivery?
That is a good question. I'm still, the freight company is still talking to the machine seller. They should get it on a truck, hopefully before the end of the week, and it'll take about a week to get here because it's coming from all the way across the country. You can probably wave at it as it goes by.
Gotcha.
So
fair enough.
Sometime late next week, best case scenario.
That's exciting.
Yep.
So how long do you think it'll take you to get up and running on that? If it let's just say hypothetically it shows up on Friday next week, when do you think you'll start milling your first part on it?
That is a good question. Running power and air isn't an issue. We already have air to where we're putting it, and we just need to pull another wire through an existing conduit, so that shouldn't be too bad. There does need to be some shop rearranging, but I guess that has to happen all beforehand. So it's basically just a matter of learning how to get it set up, setting it up, learning how to run it, and then running it. And
Gotcha.
Also, possibility of used machine funniness. There will be at least one issue. I'm not sure what it is yet, but there will be some weirdness. I know that I'll need to install the coolant system at very least, because it appears to be in a box, or DIY something if the mystery box isn't actually the coolant system. But, I mean, I would like to say a day or two, which means it's probably going to take me a week. But it'll be a really fun week.
Okay.
There'll also be a slow ramp up as I, get things sorted out for the first time. How am I, what programs am I moving over? I'll have to repost all my programs. I'll have to figure out speeds and feeds. I'll probably start with something a little bit easier. I don't know what.
Yeah. I know on Fusion they have the Haas Next Gen controller, but do they have legacy ones on there? I haven't looked.
It's got to exist. You're right. I haven't looked either, but I can't imagine it doesn't. And I know people who run this machine, and so I can get a post from them if it's not there.
That's fair. Sweet. That's exciting.
So it's amazing how much money you spend around a machine that's not actually the machine.
Yeah.
I only have 10 tool holders so far. I got these ones from Haas. It's about $700 for 10 tool holders. It's a 20 tool ATC, so I can't even fill my ATC yet, but I'm trying to, spread out costs as much as possible. I'm still a little bit torn about whether I'm going to put a Saunders plate on this thing right off the bat. I think I will. I think that $600 for the Saunders plate will pay itself back with a day or two of less messing around with work holding. Let's see. I still haven't paid the freight company, but that's another $2,000. No riggers
Okay.
on this one, but I'm renting a forklift, and to have it delivered here is about $300.
Okay.
So
Do you know all the points that you need to pick it up from when you're moving it with a forklift?
no, nope. I should
Okay.
look at that, but I'm pretty sure you just lift it from underneath. It's designed to be pallet jackable. I
It,
don't
it
think it has like fun slots or anything.
so if that is the case, I would be so careful and try to
Yeah,
find a way to strap it to where if it tries to tip off the forks, it's not going to fall.
yeah, I can
Just because
confirm there is no slots or anything. You just lift it from underneath.
okay. I would at the very least I would almost throw a strap all the way around the machine
It's probably a good idea.
and strap it to the forks just to mean if it started to tip back and forth, that strap it probably wouldn't hold it from falling, but it would keep it from sliding or something.
I have some big old ratchet straps, ones that are like 3 or 4 inches across, and the machine is not that heavy. I
Yeah.
think a ratchet strap rated to like what are those rated to? Like 10,000 pounds. I think it'll keep a 3,000 pound machine from tipping.
Yeah, to that point, I almost wonder if it's worth putting the forks above it and running your rapid straps underneath it and kind of cradling it from the top. Then there's like no possibility of it falling over.
Yeah, I'm not getting like a full rigging forklift because again,
You
it's I think
you don't
three
need a full
thousand
rigging
pounds
forklift.
on a skid.
You don't need a full rigging forklift for that.
Oh,
All you do is
okay.
you raise it up. You put your straps over your forks and clip them onto the inside of your forks, and then you line up your straps with the edge or maybe slightly in from the edge, and then you can pick it up from the top.
Okay.
The
Haas,
only huh?
I said Haas does say to not lift it, like use an overhead lift, but I think they mean don't stick some eye bolts in some
Yeah, yeah,
holes. I think this would be fine.
yeah.
I don't
Just
know.
a
I'll
th-
leave that as an option.
yeah, just a thought. The only thing I would worry about doing it that method is that if the sheet metal sides, if you can't pallet lift across the whole bottom, if the edges of the sheet metal are not sturdy at the very edges, when you go to pick
Yeah,
up the straps, it could bend the metal in. That would be my only concern before I did that 100%. But I would feel more comfortable in terms of rigging to pick it up from the top because it's such a narrow machine, and I feel like it's going to be pretty top heavy with all the weight of the spindle and controller and everything above it. I don't think it's got a whole lot of weight on the bottom end to counteract that. So I feel like it's going to be top heavy and prone to tipping if you're not careful.
that is very possible. I wonder if I can find a picture of someone moving one. But
So
I'm on a different computer, so I can't show you my screen if I do find one.
no, that's okay. And we don't have to go too deep down the rabbit hole for there. Just voicing my concerns about rigging it yourself and everything you need to watch out for because you won't have riggers insurance or all of that stuff. So taking all the precautions you can to not trash your new machine.
Yeah, there's basically two scenarios that I'll have to deal with. Scenario one is we convince Trucker to pull down my driveway, which is gravel and fairly narrow, but it is a very hard packed gravel. And if I'm doing that, then I basically just drive the forklift up, lift up the machine, pull back 6 feet, put it down, truck moves out, and then pull it into the shop and then pallet jack it in place. That's by far the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, trucker decides he can't make it in our driveway, and then we would have a 200-300 foot little ride with the forklift, and most of it would be fine because again, it's flat, hard packed gravel, but there is a slope from the road to my driveway, and that little transition right there, I think, would be the worst part of it.
Mm-hmm.
A strap would go a long way to fix that, and I may like go down it backwards. I think may make sense.
I'd get some wood, some 2x4s or something that you can cut up to kind of use as braces if you need to use them in different locations. That seems to be a pretty common thing that a lot of riggers have is wood blocks that they can stick in different areas to both take the weight but also not damage anything.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll grab some 2x4s beforehand and stand by with
And
my chop saw.
and one thing that you could do, just doing a little more brainstorming, is if you can't do the straps from the top and putting the forks through the bottom and putting a strap over it is still not, it doesn't feel sturdy enough to you, you could almost stick some 2x4s on the under. How heavy is that thing? Do you know?
The machine,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about 2,500 pounds without other things. Like if there might be a pallet or crating
Okay.
or something else that makes it a little bit heavier, but
Okay. That
I think it's
that
about
might be
2,500 pounds.
that's probably too heavy to do what I was just about to say. But I'll go ahead and say it just because you might think of something else if you run into the situation. But what I was thinking is if you can't put the straps around to the top and you can't pallet from underneath and you're worried about going down your gravel driveway and it tipping off, another option would be put your forks out wider than the actual machine is. Stick wood underneath your machine to take the place of a pallet deal. And then when you strap over the top, strap over to the ends of the wood, and that'll kind of give you a wider base that'll make it
Yeah,
harder for it to tip. Because the problem with the forks being on the inside is you're going to be on the inside of the foot pads. Whereas if you can extend the boards out even a little bit further and you can grab it on the outside, that's going to give you a wider base for your forks to grab onto, which should make it more stable overall, in theory.
and I think the worst case scenario is we put it down in the middle of the road and use my pallet jack with probably some sheets of 3/4 inch OSB or something, and just pallet jack it slowly along.
Can you actually run a pallet jack on your gravel?
So I would put down some like 3/4 inch OSB, and that's fine,
Okay,
and have two sheets and just kind of leapfrog them along. Wouldn't be
gotcha.
fast, but that's very much not the goal of rigging.
Yep, yep. That's not a bad idea. That's a great idea actually. If you can't get it over there comfortably with a forklift.
That is Plan B.
So
So
that's a fantastic idea. I like that a lot because then you're
Plan
not
A,
picking up very high.
Plan A is just back the truck right into my
Yeah,
driveway, and then it's
that's
easy
like
peasy.
Plan D. It's like the last one on the list.
Plan D is like black iron pipes and 4x4s rolling it. But I
Yeah,
don't think, I mean, it's really not that heavy of a machine.
no, it shouldn't be too bad. We're probably making a mountain out of a molehill,
Yeah.
but that's okay. These
It's,
types of topics are fun because
yeah, it may be a mountain out of a molehill, but if this molehill falls over, my business is just done. So,
yeah. That's the only reason we're talking about it so cautiously. It's like it's not really an expensive machine in the grand scheme of things. It's not a heavy machine in the grand scheme of things. But for where your business is at today, it would absolutely destroy you if that machine got damaged at the last leg right
yeah.
there. So
Technically, the machine is insured. So, I don't know.
it's
I don't know how
insured.
that would
It's
work out.
insured, I think, until you take it off the trailer. As soon as you touch it and it's not. Or wait, are you talking about business insurance?
I have insurance on the machine.
Oh, okay,
As,
yeah, never
as
mind.
part of the financing, is specifically you get insurance on the machine.
No, okay, never mind.
So,
That's cool. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, well, that'll be exciting. I cannot wait till you get that machine and start machining with it. And having some ER16 tool holders for the first time, you can actually hold some pretty large tooling in it. So
are you saying this is first time with ER16 tool holders? I use ER16 all the time. Do you not?
I got some now. I got some
Oh,
from the
I
taps.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
they're my favorite.
yeah, I really like them. I kind of want to switch all my 20s to 16s because just of the coolant and everything. Like I'm not really running that big of tools anyways. In the Tormach, so kind of want to move everything over to 16.
Yeah, they're by far my favorites. I I really wish I could find these in heat shrink, but I just can't. I've looked for them, and you can find them in ISO 30, but finding them in ISO 20 seems to be impossible.
Yeah. How do you tighten that nut down if you don't have any dogs?
I had the very same thought. There are wrench flats right here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, and
Interesting.
it's got the funny like castle nuts.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I already have one of those wrenches.
Yeah. So I had a fun long day.
Tell me
I
about it.
I went to Haas Demo Day in uh, Oklahoma. So next state over. That was so much fun, and I am exhausted.
Did you buy anything?
No, but I got a lot of names, and I looked at a lot of stuff. So I guess I can just go through the list, and I'll just try to go in the order that I hit them in the booth. So this is not in any particular order, just my day that I went. So our first stop was at the Blaser booth, and I was looking at coolant. We're using Vasco 600, I think is what it's called.
Oh, you're still using that stuff?
Yeah, and I was talking. Yeah, we got a decent amount of it when we got our first machine,
I'm getting coolant.
and I don't know what it is about the Blaser guys in my area, but anytime I bring up, hey, what do you guys think of that synergy stuff that like Titans of CNC and a bunch of other places use? They all push me towards the Vasco, and I don't know why. So anyone who's listening to this, if you have any input on coolants and specifically, Vasco 600 versus the Synergy, I think it's Synergy 735. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. Let me know. The only thing that me and Weston can figure out on that side of why they don't recommend it more is because for the Synergy, the little bit of research that we did is you have to do it with an RO water, and the Vasco, or I hope I'm saying that right. The Vasco 600, you don't. You can do it with the hard water.
Okay, that is nice.
And so I think that's the only reason they recommend it. And that's just because I don't think there's very many shops around here that invest in RO systems or are willing to, or they'll put in the synergy and they'll have problems because they don't have a proper system.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of, but I couldn't get them to confirm it. I couldn't get the Blaser guys to say anything other than they recommended the 600. So
With that coolant, do you use RO water for the first fill as well?
we don't
Or,
have an RO system at all in our current facility. That's something I'm going to put in when we move shops.
okay.
So,
Yeah, because I have an RO system.
so
Yeah. Okay. I should probably actually call like Quali Chem and talk to him about coolants. I've used 251 and I've never really had any issues with it, but like I'm doing so much titanium that there might be a more titanium specific coolant.
mm-hmm.
And if the Haas machine leaks less than my Tormach, then it might be worth switching to something else. I don't know. And
Yeah,
they would give me 5 gallons as a sample to get started, and I do not have
yeah, and
coolant
that
yet for
lasts you a
that
long
machine.
time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the only reason I want to try to look at some different coolants is I had a bad luck with the Quality Chem, but I wasn't using it properly, so that's my fault 100%. The Vasco 600, it's not a bad coolant, but every once in a while we have surface finish problems, and I'm not 100% sure if it's tool or if it's coolant, and I have the most problems on the lathe with it for
Do
surface
you
finishes.
have a coolant filter installed on that lathe?
No, and that's another problem we got to
It
address.
could be fines.
It could be, but I don't think it's fines. If anything, the problem we run into is that it gets clogged and we get a lack of coolant. Because the only thing that's going through the coolant that sometimes clogs is we've cut plastic and they're floaters and they just float and get sucked up by the pump. Talking to a couple different guys, aluminum and plastic, if you're using either one of those materials, you pretty much have to have a filter on your machine. Otherwise, there's a high likelihood that it's going to get sucked into the pump. If you have steels or stainless steels, they're heavy and they don't move enough that when they fall into the bottom of the specifically the Haas machines, the odds that they make it over to the pump are very low compared to where the pump's located and where your chips would enter the coolant.
That's interesting. I wonder if titanium is kind of the worst of all worlds because it's light enough that it could be caught by like the surface tension on top, and also you tend to make smaller chips than you would with something like aluminum. I wonder if that's one of the reasons why I have so many issues.
Yeah, I don't know. I would we're not using a coolant filter anymore on the Tormach since we upgraded to the larger pump and the larger coolant size or the coolant hose size. But I've always intended to add a coolant filter back into it, and I need to.
You will clog that ring up eventually. I know I
Yeah,
I was.
yeah, and that's something that we had a really small filter, and I just need to upgrade it to a larger filter, and I just haven't done that. And it's just because I don't think about it all the time. When I'm running certain types of chips, I've had it clog a lot, and when that happens, I go, "Oh man, I need to do that." And then it just hasn't been an issue recently because I've been running a bunch of stainless, and the chips haven't been an issue for getting into the filter. So
Did you see LMD Machine's new coolant tank?
I did.
Isn't it cool?
Oh man, I want it so bad. Like
So
we're
I have I have dibs on like the first one, but now I don't know if I'm gonna get it because I don't know if I'm gonna keep the Tormach very long. So I bet
Mhm.
if you want my dibs, you could have my dibs.
It's funny. We've tricked out our Tormach so much. I think we're going to end up with the most tricked out Tormach that exists by the time we're done with it. Because especially if I add a Renishaw probe,
Renaissance probe.
so I'm gonna have this absolutely decked out Tormach because we also got our fourth axis, so we got a
Oh,
fourth axis
nice.
for it now. So that came in. So yeah, we're gonna have it's like having the nicest Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
It's like, are you bragging? Like, what are you bragging about?
Just wait until you put a robot arm on it.
Yeah, that could happen. So I'll get to that.
Did I tell you about the mystery crate that is coming with my machine? So I just have pictures and videos of this thing. And in a couple of the pictures, there is a sealed box with tape. It looks
Oh yeah.
factory sealed.
Hmm.
It's sitting on the coolant tank. And admittedly, there is like the coolant system was never fully installed. So it's likely the coolant system, but the box is labeled in Sharpie probe. So there
Hmm.
is this chance that my machine comes with a second probe. It's probably not very high, but I might win the Renishaw lottery and end up with two of them. That would be pretty cool.
That would be very cool. You'll have to let me know if that happens, because
Yeah, I'll give you a
if it's a probe that
deal.
I could use, I would probably buy that. Okay, so there's that. So that was our first stop, was the coolant. Our second stop was, and I don't remember the name of the company, but they did angled tool heads and live turning tools. And so if we ever got a dual spindle y-axis lathe or anything with live tooling lathe wise, um, he was a pretty cool guy. What I really liked about his booth was, and they had a lot, lathe live tooling was there a bunch, which was funny because I don't feel like dual spindle or live tooling lathes might be pretty common, but dual spindle y-axis lathes, at least from the groups that I've run with around here, they seem to all be scared of it.
Yeah,
So it was, for how many distributors there were for live tooling machines, I don't feel like there's that many machines that are actually around here, which is kind of funny. And I could be wrong. Maybe it's different on the Oklahoma side, but at least on the Arkansas side, I don't feel like there's very many shops that are actually running them because they're scared of them. Um, Anyways, what I really liked about their live tool setup and even their 90-degree angled heads was that they all had quick change, miniature, proprietary but miniature, like, tool holders that you could swap out, which I thought was really cool. And so I really like those, because if we did get a live tool machine, being able to quick change all of our different end mills and things would be awesome.
yes.
So
I've always heard that they're like changing out those tools in a live tool lathe is kind of a pain because
yeah.
they're like awkward and hard to get to, and yeah.
And what's funny is everyone we talked to after that guy, they were like, "Oh yeah, we have a quick change system," but all it was a way to where you didn't need to use two nuts. It was just a way to lock it, and then you're still in there with the
Oh,
wrench taking. And they're
yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, you can put this little tool in this special spot, and then it locks it out so that you can get a wrench in there, so you're not busting knuckles." And I'm like, "Okay, like." All of you guys, this is still nut busting on the machine. And like that guy over there, he's got a little Allen key that I can turn 180 and then my tool comes out and then I rotate it 180 and my tool's locked. Like that's actual quick change. Like all the stuff you guys are talking about, that's
It's just
that's
slightly easier change.
that's just slightly easier change. That's like comparing an angle grinder to a tool holder and saying the angle grinder is quick change because you can lock the rotation of it while you're unscrewing the nut. So, anyways, so there was that. VersaBuilt was there,
Oh,
and it was
nice.
actually the president of VersaBuilt.
Oh, cool.
So that was really cool. I didn't realize that until I looked at his business card later, and we're like, wait, that guy was the president of VersaBuilt. That's pretty cool. So, anyways, talked to him some, and there was a lot of UR robots that were at this event, and I talked to him. I talked to UR Robot was there themselves, and then I talked to a bunch of other people that had them, and I took a poll of all the different people that had UR robots and all the other robot alternatives that were there in the building, and everyone that had UR robots or had the option to use UR robots with Fanuc robots or some other brands, they all said the UR robots were very reliable, and I think I probably got the most honest answer from the VersaBuilt guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they're incredibly reliable. He has heard horror stories of people having them go out after 2 years, but he said that has been he says that seems to be the exception and not the rule.
Okay.
And talking to the actual UR guys, he said they don't post any of their stats online, but he said that they used to be rated, and this is not a public number. This is not a number you're going to find anywhere. This is me talking to a salesman. So anyone who's listening to this, don't take this and post it all over the internet and say that this is what they claim. But this is what I was told. I was told that they used to rate them at 50,000 hours, and now they've rated them at 100,000 hours. So they've, within their most recent generation, they've doubled the life rating before failure.
Okay.
Their mean time between failure, I think is what it's called. And they've changed it to 100,000 hours. So
Seems like a lot. 100,000 hours is a lot of hours.
yeah. And he says that, and I asked him because after my conversation with some of the other people on the podcast and outside the podcast, he said that's at full load at max extension.
I
So
don't believe it. That's 11 years of constant runtime.
yeah. And so
No, false, wrong. There's no way.
that's just what I was told. And like I said, I'm not claiming this. I'm not saying that this is an actual stat. This is just what a salesman told me at an event where they're trying to sell me something.
Now, what
That
may be the case here is maybe the way they measure it, that's true, but you have to multiply that times like 6 different joints and like statistic it out.
yeah. Yeah. And that could be. But one thing that he did say was pretty cool is he said that if a joint goes out, he said you can replace it with a handful of tools, and he says it was like $2 to $4 grand to replace the joint, which is not that bad. So like
Yeah.
even if they only lasted 2 years and I had to replace a joint every once in a while, like I feel like they'd pay for themselves 100 times over by that point.
Oh,
So
I'm sure it'll still pay for itself. I don't know. I've always heard that it was more expensive to fix than that, and
that's what this guy said. And once again, we're talking about a UR salesman, but he actually has a UR that he owns personally, and he loaned it to someone for a demo, and they dropped it, and it broke two arms, and he had to replace it himself. So it might his numbers I believe are accurate. Now what I don't know is if he got some kind of discount because he works with them and he's quoting numbers that he paid that you might not pay as an external customer.
Yeah.
And so
So
that's what I don't know.
so like $6,000 per joint is probably
Yeah.
safer.
Yeah, $6,000 per joint. But to be fair, the machines he priced, because I asked him about rough pricing on these machines or on the arms, and they were between 30 to 60 depending on the model. And if you did 30, if let's just if you did 30 divided by 6, that's 5,000, and they have 6 joints. So I feel like a replacement of around 2,000 or 2 to 4,000 is a reasonable number for that machine. And for their most expensive machine, that'd be doubled to like 10,000. So I feel like the 2 to 4 range is reasonable depending on the joint you're replacing on the machine. That might not be the case for the most expensive joint, but for one of your mid tier joints, that might be the one that actually dies. Who knows? But regardless, I was super impressed. I wrote my first program on a UR robot, had a whole
Okay.
bunch of fun. Took me about 5 to 10 minutes to run it and to set it up. The guy who I talked to last time worked for VersaBuilt. He must have never actually used a robot, and he didn't work for he didn't work for UR.
Yeah.
He worked for I think Philips, and he had never actually programmed one of those. But talking to the UR guys and having them walk us through it, it was stupid easy to program. Like I felt like it would take no time and anyone to do it. So I was really impressed with that. So, anyways, all that to be said, talking to those two guys, because those were the two guys that I talked to next, I feel like a UR robot and the VF3 YT with a 5-axis trunnion still kind of riding that train right now.
Okay.
Just kind of everything that I've been looking at and thinking of. And it's more than just the machine, it's more than just the robot. There's a lot of Haas support in my area.
Yeah.
And the Haas reps, if I get a Haas machine. So here's kind of some of my thinking. While we were at the event in Tulsa, everyone that we talked to about the UR robots knew of the shop in Arkansas that we went and visited. They all knew about it. So if it's still early on and we can get a UR robot set up on a VF3 YT with a 5-axis robot, and we can become a hub that everyone brings their shop, or everyone comes to, hey, we want to see automation in action, and people start coming through our shop, and we won't have to worry about marketing in the job shop space. People will just be filing through our shop to see what we're doing. We can kind of become like that bike company. They're not a job shop, so there's not a lot of benefit for them, for people coming and viewing their stuff. But there's a heck of a lot of benefit if we can get to a point where we're the type of shop that the Haas reps. Anytime anyone's like, "Hey, I want to see, this," well, come look at this shop over here, and we could meet a lot of people, make a lot of connections doing that, and be like free marketing.
Except
So,
your customers are not going to be the people buying a Haas necessarily.
yes and no, because even my biggest customer, who is my biggest customer, they have 3 or 4 Haas's in their machine shop.
Okay, fair enough.
So my biggest customer has the exact same lathe as I do. And it's actually a nicer ST15 because they got a few more options than we did. Ironically, they hate it because they think it's a baby machine, and they're I don't let me rephrase that. Talking to their machinists, they're not huge fans. They like the manual stuff.
Oh, of course.
So they have manual bridge ports and manual lathes, and they're slowly transitioning into CNC. But all the CNC stuff that they have is Haas. So, I feel like I would be able to make a lot of connections through the Haas network just because they've been in so many different shops. And I have a little bit more access to that as I get Haas equipment. Not that I will stay with Haas. It's not that it's going to be a long-term commitment. I don't know. I'm still figuring all that stuff out, but I'm very impressed with the network that they have, and on the mill side at least, they seem to be very good quality. On the lathe side, there's some arguments that I could feel like could be made, but on the mill side, I'm everything that I've seen, and especially some of the demo parts that I was looking at today, I'm pretty comfortable on the mill side for Haas.
Yep, they make good mills.
So, anyways, so that was one of the other booths I stopped at. Stopped at a CMM,
Okay.
and it was a lot cheaper than I was expecting for some of their smaller entry level units. Under 50.
Who
Under
was it?
50. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to. I've left all my paperwork at the shop.
Was it one of the big ones? There's like three big
No,
ones.
it's one I hadn't heard of before.
Okay. And that's why they're cheaper.
Well, no, the machine they had there was over 100. They just had some shop models that were smaller. They could only do like a under 2 foot by 2 foot, relatively small area. And they were designed for in shop use. But I don't know. It was pretty cool seeing their thing, seeing the CMM on there. See here, what else was interesting? Saw some air compressor guys. Talked to them. Himsaw was there. So have you heard of a Himsaw? So it's a really really accurate bandsaw.
Interesting.
And so he had a demo there where he had one of their baby models, and he was cutting off like really 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 thin strips of metal bar. Like he was doing a mild steel, but he was cutting it like less than a 32nd inch thick as a demo. It was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And so they had some big units, and they were cheaper than I was expecting as well. Although they're this is something that was annoying. Himsaw is, I guess, a European based company, and they don't have small auto saws for the US market. So their smallest auto saw was in the 30 to 40 grand range.
Oh, oof. Yeah.
And was quite massive. And I was talking to him, I was like, man, you need a smaller one. He's like, I keep telling them that, but they won't send them over to the US. And I was like, man, if you could get a smaller one, I'd be all over that.
I've heard the Tormach AF50 or whatever it is isn't that bad.
Yeah, I told him about that too. I had that conversation with him. I was like, it's like Tormach sells an auto saw. They sell it for $5,000. Like, it's basically the same saw we got, just with an automation package put on it. And I was like, our saw isn't great. Like, it cuts with a little bit of a taper. But if I could set it up as an auto saw for $5,000 and walk away and just let it feed, especially on some of these high volume jobs, I can deal with a little bit of taper in my machine. Like, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So, and
have I told you about the condition my saw is in right now?
Mm-mm.
So, do you remember when I blew up the motor on it?
No. Oh, yes. It like locked up or something.
Yeah. Well, it also took out the switch with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in its current state, the switch is bypassed. So it just turns on when you plug it in, which is fine, but getting to the plug was inconvenient. So I had one of those like remote relays that like woodworkers use on their shop vacs.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have a remote controlled bandsaw.
That's hilarious.
It works. It's not ideal, but it works.
That's awesome.
I did finally replace the blades on it, and oh boy, did that make a big difference.
Yeah, we probably need to replace the blade on ours relatively soon.
Do you only have one blade, or do you switch between blades for different materials?
We've just been running one.
Okay.
For all materials.
This time I bought two blades. I bought a hard materials blade, and I bought a basically an aluminum blade.
Well,
and I haven't tried the hard material blade, but the aluminum blade seems to be a pretty significant improvement.
So, so I will say this: we have multiple blades, but we don't trade them out, change them out. So we in the beginning we set it up for aluminum, and it's like, oh, we got to cut steel, so we change it up to steel. Oh, we got to cut stainless. Oh, so we set it up to stainless, and it's like the stainless steel blade's not going to get damaged cutting any other of the other materials, but the aluminum blade will get destroyed if I try to cut stainless with it.
Yeah.
So we just pretty much set it up for stainless, and it cuts all materials with that blade. So
Yeah. I used to have a multi-purpose blade on it, and I mean it worked in everything for a while, but I think it was especially the titanium that did it in, and it just I feel like it had one tooth left on it, and it would like take a cut and then go all the way around, and then take a cut and then go all the way around. And it cut, it left a decent finish, but it took forever.
yeah, yeah. So I will say this though, Renishaw was actually there. So I actually
Were
got
they?
some contacts, some local contacts. I told them about my woes with my Tormach, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I've never heard of anyone putting it on there," but he's like, "Send me an email," and he's like, "I'll see what I can come up with." He's like, "I think it can be." He said it should be able to be done. He said, "There's no reason." He says, "As long as it's got a skip signal and a power source, that's all you really need." But yeah, putting lipstick on a pig, probably gonna be
Yeah.
doing it.
Now, would you have to find a way to send a wake up signal to the Renishaw? And it,
So you can program them to be have several different wake up conditions.
oh, okay,
I
that's
didn't
good.
and I didn't know this until I started talking to him about it. You can set it to be. I think they have an accelerometer, so you can do a spin to wake.
Oh, that's nice.
So you can do that. You can do a when it goes out of range, it goes to sleep. So if you have your receiver and if it's in the umbrella, as soon as it goes out of range, it'll automatically enter into a sleep mode. And then they had it where if you had the right signals, you could send it a signal to tell it to go to sleep or wake up. So that's another way you can do it. But the spin to wake was probably my favorite. I like that. So
Yeah, you'd have to add macros to the, or you have to alter the macros on the machine, but that doesn't seem too difficult.
yeah, yeah,
You mean like you turn it up to 500 RPMs or something, right?
yeah. Yeah, something like that, just to spin to wake. So that, or if it's got an accelerometer and you cannot do a spin to wake, if you could just have it where if it detects movement, wake up. Because all I really needed to do is shut down whenever the machine's turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it needs to be is a sleep condition where if it detects no motion for say 30 seconds, go to sleep. If it detects motion, wake up. And then if it starts receiving a signal, um, when it wakes up, stay on until it's not receiving a signal and doesn't receive motion. So that'd be ideal.
Makes sense.
Anyways, I was about to throw the probe across the shop today. So I did when we got back. I did a little bit of machining this afternoon. When we got back from the event, kept having problems with the probe. It was I need to call the guy from Zoom Speed. He gave me his number, but because of the time difference, if I tried to call him, it would have been like 10 o'clock at night. Um, and so I need to do it in the morning, just because I'm sure it's a great product, but I'm fighting it left, right, and center. I haven't had a day go by that I haven't used it, that I haven't run into a problem where I've had to tear it apart and hit the reset button or replug in the battery. And the thing is that it's a different condition every single time it stops working, it seems like. And so I can't nail down what we've changed out the battery. And, sometimes I feel like it's the coolant, but then it's like, but it's still dry in there. So maybe it's not the coolant. Like this last time, it ran all day yesterday pretty good. I didn't really have any issues yesterday. I think I had one at the beginning of the day, but that was it. But then when it sat overnight, I think there was coolant that condensed on the inside of it. And so during the day while it was hot and running, it wasn't a problem. But when it sat overnight, the coolant condensed, and I don't know for sure if the coolant got on it and was causing problems this morning, but or when I got back this afternoon. But I wiped it down and still had problems. But I feel like that eliminated at least that potential for problem for that one. So I don't know. I'm I'm fed up with it, and It's way too beneficial to not have a wireless probe. Like the quality of parts. I'm in the process of running a batch of like 24 stainless steel parts, and I'm probing. I've got 3 ops set up in my machine, and I'm probing all 3 ops. It's op 3, 4, and 5. It's a 5 op part, and I am consistently within 1 thou or better on all my parts. And I don't have a hard stop on all the locations that I'm putting them in there because I don't have enough hard stops. And so I'm just getting it close, and I'm letting the probe touch it to make sure everything's good. And I'm consistently within 1 thou. So yeah, it's I'm producing way too good of my quality of parts is increasing way too much to not have a wireless probe in the Tormach at all times.
Yeah. I have started to see some minor issues with my Truetronics probe again, which I'm really bummed about. Last week, at the end of the week, I ran into some issues. Now, I was able to fix those by slowing down the rough probing speed to like very slow, which if I actually remember having that slowed down the first time I was using it, and I think I just forgot about that setting, and it worked reliably for like a week or two, but then it stopped working as reliably, and I slowed that down, and it seems to be working again. But the one of the problems I run into is the settings in Path Pilot for the rough probing speed and like the fine probing speed, they not only apply to the tool probe, they also apply to the table probe. And
Oh,
I do tool breakage detections a lot in my programs. And they are now very slow because my settings are 2 inches per minute at the roughing speed and 1 IPM at the final speed.
you can be way faster than that. Or is your
It's because of the Drutronics probe, and they share the same settings.
oh
So now, the fortunately, when I'm probing from Fusion, the Fusion speeds and feeds for the probe take priority over the ones in the Tormach. So I can't actually bump it up on Path Pilot, but then I have to remember to slow it back down whenever I'm using the probe and the spindle for like setting a fixture offset or whatever. And I don't always remember to
gotcha.
do that. And when I forget, tool changes, because it does the tool breakage detection, literally take like 2.5 minutes sometimes. So
So if it uses all the functions from Fusion, why are you adjusting the Tormach one at all? If you can just set up the Fusion ones for one and the Tormach ones for the other.
because when you're just like quickly setting a work coordinate system, like you throw in a vice or whatever and touch off the part for your first time,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
and then you forget to set it back.
Yeah. So is it just because the reaction time of the skip signal?
I think it may even be kinematic, or actually no, that I take that back. I think the answer is yes, where if you push the probe tip too far because of the delay in the reaction time, it gets stuck. I think you just have to very lightly, just barely move the probe tip at all, which by slowing it
Gotcha.
down, like there's I don't know, you
So
get
if
what
you
I'm saying.
so basically the problem is not that it can't detect it at the speed. The problem is that if you go too fast, it doesn't reset.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I'm following you
And
now.
the velocity times the skip signal delay time, which isn't very
Gotcha.
much, but it's just enough.
It's enough. So probably with the different tripod design, or does it have? Did you remove all the grease whenever you got
I
in there?
did.
That could be your problem.
I've tried I've tried various things before I replaced the part that I replaced.
Oh,
I tried conductive greases, I tried non-conductive greases, I tried
so
clean.
one we had the same problem with our Tormach probe when we took it apart, and we found that we had to rotate the probe because the balls and the little thing that the tripod piece that kind of would break connection every time you bump it. There was one. It was almost like it was set in such a way that they were precision fit to each other, where if you rotated it, it wouldn't work properly. So like the so like think of it like a oh, how do I describe this properly? There's you have a 1 in 3 chance to put it, well, 1 in 3 chance to put it in the right spot.
I suppose that's possible, but I've taken this thing apart and put it back together so many times. It is possible, though.
Now I don't know how it is for the Drutonics, but for the Tormach probe, it was real easy to test because we'd put it in one fixture and then I just hold everything together and then just try touching it in a couple different locations and make sure it's set and reset. And then I would rotate it, half assemble it, and try it a couple different times. And that's how I eventually figured out that that was one of the problems. And ever since I've done that, I haven't had any issue on the probe side. It's all been on the electronic side.
I haven't noticed anything like that. And I've had this thing apart and back together dozens of times.
Well, if it's not resetting whenever you're touching it, that's a mechanical problem.
It might be. I almost wonder if it's the electronics being weird.
But
My
then,
theory is that the
how would speed fix that then?
well, I think it's a sensitivity thing where it is too sensitive. I think the
Oh, is it like a
the
debounce?
voltage that goes across the contacts is too low, and whatever system is in there is having a hard time reading the difference between a light contact and no contact.
Gotcha.
That's my theory, because I think it's like 3.7 volts, and I think the Tormach ones run on 12 volts.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on a wireless connection now, so, or wireless, so I don't know what the probe's doing yet, but
What kind of battery does it have in there?
it's like a 3 volt battery, so
Okay, then it's probably running at like 3 volts.
I don't think they have a buck boost or anything like that to increase it.
Yeah, because mine just has a one cell lipo, so it's got to be running at like
Yeah,
3.7 volts.
basically the same that I am.
Interesting.
So I don't have an issue with it, at least with that side of it. I have an issue with the electronics physically locking up and it losing connection, or the board going into some weird state that even when I reset it, it doesn't work, and I have to physically disconnect and reconnect the battery because the reset button doesn't actually reset it to a working state. No, that's a really annoying thing that I've run into, where you push the button and it resets the program, or it's supposed to reset the program, and it'll connect, and then I'll get it all put together, and within 2 minutes it'll disconnect again and it will be unresponsive. So I'll tear it apart, push the button, it'll reset, it'll connect, and then it'll work for a few seconds and then it'll disconnect. And then if I unplug and replug the battery, that resets it. That hard reset actually works. So I have no idea what's going on internally that would cause that. It's really annoying.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So, anyways,
Probes.
probes.
There's no good options on the market right now.
Well, for under 6 grand.
There's no good options at our price point on the market right now.
Anyways, so yeah, frustrations with that. Other than that, just working on getting the guy kicked out of the shop. He's actually starting to clear stuff out.
Was he supposed to be out by the end of September?
Yes. So we had a thing called Picket Time on 59 where he was supposed to sell all of his crap. And I think he sold like 3 items. At least that's my theory. Because like nothing sold. And I
Yeah.
stopped by his shop once during the whole event. And he had a big sign out front that said something along the lines of everything in our store has been priced at what we think it's worth. If you make us a reasonable offer, we might consider it.
So not
And
exactly a fire sale.
yeah, yeah. And so he didn't move very much, and his place was pretty much dead during the whole event, even though there was literally cars everywhere. And he had huge signs everywhere that said "Picket time on 59, store closing." Like I think people came in there and they're like, "Oh, your prices are still really high, and you're not really wanting to bargain." So no,
Yeah. So when does he have to legally be out of there?
Saturday last week or last Saturday.
Are you gonna like charge him rent or something?
I
Like, what
don't
do you
know.
do?
My uncle's been dealing with him, and the problem is my uncle's a pushover, and
Yeah,
he's out of state right now. He's in Europe, and so he's been the main point of contact. And we're basically screaming at my uncle to tell him to get all his crap out of there, so that he can be the one point of contact. Because we don't have time to mess with him. Because we're hustling with all the stuff that's got to be done by middle of October, middle to end of October, and which is a whole nother topic. But we're still swamped, and it's kind of insane the amount of parts that we really need to be making per day to meet everything, which is a whole nother level of stress. But we can't. Long story short, we can't be messing with this guy in the shop until end of October, realistically. So we've been letting him deal with it, and he is too nice. Because if it was me and I was talking to him, I'd tell him that his stuff is either going to be in a dumpster or it's going to be or it's going to be somewhere where he wants. So, because we need to get in there and start working on it.
yep.
So,
Sorry, going back a conversation here. So I found the probe that Sile ships with their machines. It is the Pioneer touch probe, which thanks Pioneer for choosing a actual like NASA probe as your name, because that makes googling it hard. And I'm not able to find specific pricing, but it says between $400 and $3,600 for a system,
really?
which puts it at somewhere between a lot and a little bit cheaper than Renishaw.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That's something to look into. I thought they
Yeah.
were an American company. I'm very wrong about that. They are a Chinese company.
Hmm.
So I don't see any. I don't see any listed pricing other than that, but uh, it's
It's like the
definitely it's
it's like the
definitely
Chinese.
interesting.
This looks identical to the Renishaw website.
Yeah, because they're a
Like,
knockoff in every way, I'm sure.
yeah. Like I've been looking at so many Renishaw probes that, like, looking at this, it is almost identical to Renishaw. That's hilarious.
Yep. So half the price.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I need to. So what do I do? Do I get a translator?
This also says minimum order quantity 100 sets.
What?
But I'm on globaltradecenter.com, which is kind of Alibaba-ish looking. I wonder if they on Alibaba. I've been using Alibaba. Did I tell you about that for
Mm-mm.
the tool company thingy that I'm working on?
Oh, okay.
Because I had my samples come in here, and I got those from China. I'm obviously not grinding the tools myself, and I don't think any of my customers will care. They'll care about the price, and that's about it.
Hmm.
Let's see. We've gotten to the exciting part of the podcast where Harrison and I look at the internet while live streaming,
It's an internet commentary now.
and I can't even
Share.
share because I'm on a new computer.
Hmm. Oh, you got a new computer, or you're using a different computer?
So now that Scott is no longer at Design the Everything, I took Scott's computer.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
this was actually his computer that he built when he started DTE, and it's a pretty beefy computer because he built it for video editing. And when he left, I was like, "Can I buy that from you?" Because my computer, the one I use right now, it was a pretty good computer when I first bought it. Like, it was a top of the line laptop, but
Mm-hmm.
that was in like 2012 or so, and it's getting old. And so when Scott was leaving, I was like, his computer, freshly built, brand new, you could probably do just about anything on this computer. And I was like, can I have that? And yeah. So uh, it also helps because he gets some money in Scott's pocket, and he kind of needs it right now because he's jobless.
Fair enough.
Not
Well,
that I don't, but he agreed to take a couple payments on it. So
Okay.
Works out for both of us.
Good deal. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else major. The Haas Demo Day's kind of been the big thing on my mind, and it's really solidified my need for a better mill. I've been running.
First, you need a workshop that you can move
Yes,
into.
yes. I have been running more parts on the local university's mini mill, and it ran a 3/8 tool in stainless like a champ.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then I switched over to a 1/2 inch, and it felt like it machined the 1/2 inch similar to how the Tormach handles a 3/8. I kept having all kinds of problems. It was a long reach 1/2 inch, which is probably the issue more than anything, because it had plenty of torque, but it didn't have the rigidity it needed.
Interesting.
And I ended up using a high efficiency milling strategy, and it didn't have it was on the edge of screeching, but it the finish looked really good. So, um, for those that are curious, I was running around 250 SFM with a chip load of around 2 to 3 thou. I think I ended up at around 2.3 thou feet per tooth, and at a depth of about 3/4 of an inch and a step over of around 30 thou.
I up until you said a step over 30 thou, I was about to say I feel like I've run these on my Tormach before, but I was not doing a step over of 30 thou. So
Oh, I do step overs of a 1/8 inch on my Tormach with a 1/4 inch tool. I'll do a half the diameter of my 1/4 inch tool. So I can get almost a half cubic inch of material removal on the Tormach with a 1/4 inch tool in stainless. And I ran the numbers on this one, and it was just under a half. So I was doing the same type of material removal on the Haas as I was on my Tormach. So in one respect, I was really impressed with what I could do with a 1/4 inch tool on my Tormach, but the 1/2 inch tool on the Haas, it was kind of blowing me away how slow I was having to run it without it screeching and sounding absolutely horrible. But the couple differences there is, one, this was a four flute 1/2 inch tool, and I'm running a 5 flute 1/4 inch tool on the Tormach. And if you compare the 3/8, I was running a 3/8 1/2 inch, 3/8 5 flute, and I removed twice the material in under half the time with the 3/8 and at a 1 inch stick out. And so I think my MRR on that was around 2 inches, 2 cubic inches a minute.
yeah, I bet with some tuning and some more time to play, you could have gotten the 1/2 inch better because that sounds low to me.
It sounds incredibly low to me, and I was playing with all kinds of settings trying to get it to work, and it's 100% a rigidity issue. It had the horsepower, that was not the issue, not in the slightest. I couldn't keep it from chattering and screeching, and it didn't like the finish where it was chattering didn't look horrible, and it didn't look like it was damaging the tool at all, but it was so loud. And one, I'm in a university setting, so I didn't really want to go too loud because it's in a building where people are teaching classes and whatnot. But it was just like, it shouldn't be that loud and it shouldn't chatter that much.
Was it rubbing because you were running it too slow? Because that is a 1/2 inch end mill, so you
No,
need a higher feed
so
per tooth.
so the settings I started out with was a 3/4 inch depth, half 1/4 inch step over, and a feed SFM of 300, and a feed per tooth of 3.4 thou per tooth. And that's kind of what Haas was recommending. Although I did check, and I was looking at the 5/8 tool, not the 1/4 inch tool on the feed per tooth, and it was supposed to be 2.9. So I tried lowering that first, and that helped, but I was still screeching like crazy.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
so what I ended up doing was I ended up looking up one of Haas's 5-flute tools, because Haas's website, the different feeds and speeds charts that they have are all over the place. They've been updating them slowly. And the 4-flute that I was using did not have an updated speeds and feeds chart. So I went to a 5-flute, and I basically copy pasted all of the feeds and speeds it was recommending minus a flute. And that's when I got my high efficiency feeds and speeds. And I got my step over, my SFM, and my feed per tooth from a 5-flute tool. And that's ultimately what ended up working and not screeching and gave me pretty good surface finish.
I wonder if it would have been happier with like a high feed strategy.
That's what worked. That's what I did.
I think we need to define terms here. How are you defining high efficiency milling?
Small step over at relatively high SF or higher SFMs with a bigger chip
And full
load.
depth of cut, a large depth of
Yeah.
cut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A high feed milling would be a much faster feed per tooth with a probably wider width of cut, but a low depth of cut.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Oh,
So,
yeah.
and were
Maybe
you using an adaptive toolpath or like a pocketing strategy?
adaptive.
I wonder if the machine would have liked a pocketing strategy better.
I don't know. It was 304 stainless steel, and it seemed really rough. 304. Like I've run some 304 that it's not an issue, but this particular brand of 304 that I was using was definitely on the harder end of 304s I've run. I've definitely had 304s that I could run 3, 4, 500 SFM, no problem. This one, anything over 250 SFM, immediately, no matter the strategy, would cause really loud, bad noises.
Interesting.
So, regardless of the machining strategy I did.
I think one of the things that's interesting about the two different kinds of machining we do is generally I don't hear bad sounds. I hear either good cutting sound or silence, aka a broken tool. So I actually
Yeah,
kind of find it interesting that you're dealing with screeching because that's generally not something I deal with, except maybe in like tight corners with a longer tool. I'll get some squealing, but normally it's either cutting or broken.
yeah. No, I deal with loud noises on the Tormach, and apparently even louder noises on the Haas.
More power means more chatter better.
So, yeah,
I showed you this tool, right?
yeah.
This is the 1/4 inch diameter sample tool from China. I have been meaning to run this. I got a bunch of volunteers to try them out for me. I meant to send them yesterday and I got distracted and I didn't. So I should probably do that tonight. But I don't know if this tool is going to work. I really hope it does because it is awesome and it has gotten a really good response from people. So when I first kind of pitched the idea a couple of months ago, there was a lot of people that were like, meh. But once people have seen the tool and been like, oh, it's like 95% carbide and 5% air, as opposed to a traditional tool that's like 50% air. People have been more optimistic about it. So I don't know. I need to make chips with it.
Yeah, yeah. That'd be really cool. So,
And I got pricing back in for bulk buying, and I should be able to be fairly close to like Lakeshore Carbide prices, kind of in that price range. So not like super cheap Amazon specials, but not Harvey Tool, and that's exactly where I wanted to be. So
yeah, cool. That's exciting. I will be excited to see where those tools end up going.
so here's a question for you: are there any oddball tools that you would like to have, but they're either like too expensive or like you just can't find them? I have a couple.
So I haven't actually looked to see how hard it would be to do this. I'm pretty sure Harvey has some good options for this, but it would be interesting for what you're doing, which is a lower tooth count and whatnot. So I watched some videos on Fusion 360 programming, and they were showing how to make lathe parts on a mill and doing undercuts with a slitting saw.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that idea. But I wonder, interesting thing I haven't seen is a uh, kind of like a single flute idea applied to a slitting saw. If you had,
Interesting.
so if you could like skip teeth, would that help with machine rigidity at all or anything like that? Like, because a lot of slitting saws have a ton of teeth, and
Yeah.
they pretty much vary the teeth based off of the diameter of the tool. But I have a hard time with the torque at the lower RPMs,
Mm.
and so I
Ooh,
don't know
that's a
if you
good
could.
idea.
I don't know if you could change the strategy on that and have less teeth. That way, you can get into a higher RPM range.
That is a really interesting idea. Though the idea of putting any sort of saw onto like a Nomad is kind of terrifying, or like onto a Shapeoko, but it is something that those people can't do.
Yeah,
So that's a good idea. I will look into that. It would probably be a like a key seat cutter.
yeah. Hmm.
I that is a good idea because I love love me some salami
Yeah.
slice method.
And so that's just something that I don't really see existing in that side of things, and that I still struggle with my Tormach just because of how low RPMs you have to run to use those things, and it's kind of annoying. So, but the SFM is probably that's the other problem is if you reduce the number of teeth, that doesn't really adjust your SFM because that's dependent upon your diameter, right?
Correct, but it would help with
The
the
loading.
torque requirement, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what we care about.
yeah. You care more about the torque requirements rather than the actual. Yeah, so that would help.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Another idea I had was I'm going to do the same thing, long, stubby single flute, but as a ball mill. I would also like some, and I don't know what like flute counts they're going to look like, but I would like some larger diameter tools with a aggressive bull nose. So like I don't know, probably a 3/8 inch tool with like a eighth inch radius or something like that.
Yeah.
Which again, these exist other places, but they're not super common. I would also like to do a fairly short ball nose with like a million flutes, like 8 flutes or something for surfacing.
Trying to think if there's anything else that I've run into. So here's another interesting question. I've heard that the variable flute chamfer tools make a pretty big difference. I wonder if you could do a variable flute like single flute chamfer mill. Like when I say variable flutes, I mean something
Do
that's
you,
not straight, like a curved flute,
yeah,
a
the
helix,
helical flute.
a helix chamfer tool that's a single flute.
I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
Just because the straight edges, and it's something that I've been meaning to get at some point is a chamfer tool that has a helix on it, just because I hear it leaves a much better surface finish.
Yeah, that's what I use, the Lakeshore one, and I've been very happy with it.
And so I don't know if having going to a single flute for one of those, and specifically for large cuts, because I feel like the larger your tool diameter is, the less flutes you need for lower horsepower machines. And having a variable helix single flute large width chamfer tool seems very unique to me. So it's another
Yeah, I
thought.
mean, large single flute chamfer tools are pretty common.
Yeah, but I don't think any of them have a helix angle.
Yeah, but none of them would have a helix angle.
So what else?
Also, a like a face mill that you can stick in a with a 3/8 inch shank so that it'll
Hmm.
fit in an ER16 collet. And by face mill, I mean like 5/8 of an inch or a half inch, something that a pocket NC or a Nomad could handle. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe more like a fly cutter kind of setup. That's another thing on my list.
Yeah, that's about all I can think of off the top of my head that are kind of unique, interesting tools that could be cool to see.
Yep. But need to get these ones tested first, and then figure out if people actually want to buy them. So far, I'm still only like $160 invested in this thing, and I want to prove it out before I go more than that.
Yeah, that's cool though. What else? Just staying busy. That's about all I got. I'm just I'm so ready to be in a new shop and with new equipment. Like I feel like everything I have is a jank setup on like professional machining job shop
Yeah.
machining levels, and I've got the business flow and cash flow to go to the next level, and I'm getting frustrated with the shortcomings of everything that's around me.
Well, be prepared. There's two things that are happening in your very near future. So, one, you're going to buy your new shop, or you're going to be able to move into your new shop, and it's going to take you, what do we decide on? Like 13.5 times longer than you expect to get it up and running and in good
Mm,
condition. The other thing is you are going to remove your current bottleneck of your mill, and that new bottleneck is going to immediately fall on being your time.
yes.
So be prepared for that because that will happen. And
Oh yeah.
your natural reaction is going
My
to be just to work through it.
my time is already a bottleneck, more so than the machines. The machines are already sitting more than they should today, right now. That's a bottleneck we're feeling right now, which is not a good thing. So when we get moved over into the new shop, another thing we're going to be considering is our first employee. So that's something we got to get figured out, because I feel like if we can keep the parts flowing and keep them coming in, I could pay someone to produce parts all day. Um, if I can focus on programming, or Weston can focus on programming, and we can have, if we're both doing something and there's someone that's always running parts every day, I think we can keep him we can keep someone busy doing that.
But you
Because
need
the
to build the
problem,
systems right now.
yes, and that's something we've been working on. And things like probing, like the more smarts I can build into my code to make it less risky to the machine crashing, the better. And so that's something I am trying to do more of, is get everything programmed in such a way that I can hand it off to someone and they can just run it, and the probe will correct issues if things are misloaded. So I've been experimenting with probing it apart and then stopping the machine if it detects an error and how a part's loaded. And how far off can I go before I'm either going to crash a probe or um, run into other problems. And so I've been started down that path and trying to debug and come up with reliable, safe solutions. I've broken a couple pro tips in this process so far, but that's part of the learning curve of programming in such a way that, um, because I have a probe at my disposal, with a wireless probe, and I can use it more. I'm trying to figure out all the different cases I can use it in, and that's causing me to break some styluses in that process. But it'll make for a more reliable process if I stick someone in front of it and say, "Hey, load these parts, put them here, do this, do that," and then I don't have to worry as much about them doing something bad. Won't be able to solve everything, but I can at least check.
Would your employee be doing setups at all?
I don't know. It all
Okay,
depends on
fair.
the type of employee we get. I have no idea what skill level the employee will be able to afford. I know that as a company standard, I I know a lot of people that have manufacturing companies, and I know some of them will hire people that are very low hourly rate for a reason. And I don't want to become one of those shops. I want to hire high quality people at high pay that are high performers, and then I want to have a lot of automation. So basically, I don't want to have a company size larger than probably around 10 people if I can help it, but I want to have a crap ton of machines, and I can spread that labor out over many machines. So that's my goal, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to that with my first employee. Um, and that's what I got to figure out.
So if you live near Harrison and are interested in a machining job, reach out to Harrison at harrison.com.
It's funny. I have a lot of people who have been interested for a while. Yeah, I have a local high school that I graduated from, and I know a lot of the parents and kids, and a lot of them want their kids to come work at my shop. I work at a university, and so I have a lot of guys there who have wanted to come work at my shop. And then at my old job, I have a lot of people that I worked with in the past that are like, "Hey, if you're ever hiring, let me know because I hate this job too," and they want to come work with me. And I'm just like, to all of you, I have no money, but that's changing and I'm going to need an employee in the near future. So it's going to be a change of mindset, and it's trying to figure out when I can hire my first employee, even though I need him. I have to make sure I can have a guaranteed income for them for a set amount of time because, yeah, I yeah,
Maybe what you need to do is like right now hire an intern. Be like, okay, this is a 8-week program or a 16-week thing. Come work for me, 16 weeks, learn about some machining, learn some other stuff. And what that'll do is break all of your systems that you didn't know sucked. Because there will be some.
yeah.
And, then you have a one that could turn into a potential employee. Two, you have an easy out if things, don't go forwards because it's a preset time. Like they're not expecting to stay longer.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever point I'm on D, it'll be cheaper.
Yeah, I've thought about that. There's a lot of engineers that I could potentially hire as a summer intern, but I don't think they would stay long term because I probably can't offer them engineering levels of pay whenever they graduate.
But that's
But it would
perfect. Like you just need someone to come in and
break all our stuff.
break all of your systems
Yeah, that's a good point.
and do valuable work while they're doing that.
Yeah, I have thought about seeing if they could like run the mill at the university, getting them trained up, and then just like that gives me an extra machine that's like, hey, between classes, can you run these parts?
I feel like there might be some ethical issues here, but I like where your head's at.
I say that, but I joked about that with the professors at the university, and they were totally cool with it. So, so if there is ethical issues, other than like you're paying someone, the only ethical issue would be the fact that the equipment is not mine. But everyone who is paying for the equipment is like, hey, if it gets used, it's been sitting. Like I'm pretty much the only one that's using it. So I think the more use they can see getting out of that investment, even if it like they got it to teach their kids. So if they have a kid that is running it, like to them that's a win.
Fair enough.
So
I will say, I just saw a job posting for my local technical college. It's basically your exact thing there. And I'm like, I could do that. I would consider that.
yeah.
It'd probably
It's
help
not
if I knew how to run anything other than a Tormach, but
yeah. For me, I wing most of it. I'll be honest. Like I don't have and I told him that up front. I said, "Hey, I have a part-time or I have a business I'm trying to get off the ground. I'm more than willing to come in and offer my expertise, but I am not a teacher." And so far they've been chill with it. They've enjoyed it and they said all their students love their class, which is probably true because I don't have homework. So it's pretty easy to be the favorite professor if you don't have homework.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like I could actually approach it a little bit more like from a academia level. I don't know. Like I am
Probably.
used to presenting information because like I have my YouTube videos I have that I totally do all the time. Like I have this podcast. Like I'm used to talking in front of people, and I feel like I could figure out how to present information in an effective way.
I
That being said, in a machining class, here's a machine, go make stuff is probably the best approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I do need to have more structure. The first two times I've taught the CNC class, it's been more like, here's a part, program it, show me what you've done. I'll correct problems that you're running into. And then at the very end, I'll go through how I would do it. I probably need to change my strategy to more, this is how you program a part, this is how you run a part, and just show them everything instead of having them figure it out on their own, just so I can get a little bit further along. The thing that I've been trying with my teaching style has been more of, I want you to hit your head against the wall a few times before I tell you the answer, just
Because that's
because
how life works.
that's how life works. And because I so many of these kids, they're like, okay, what's the answer? And you can get through more content if you just tell them the answer, but there's more value in you hitting your head against the wall multiple times before you, and then I come in and give you the answer, because you'll learn it and understand it at a much deeper level. Because I've learned both ways, and the professors who've said hit your head against the wall and then I'll tell you the answer, I've retained that information way more than someone that's just like, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, you're done. And it's just like, okay, I just followed a tutorial where I did everything that it said, and I have no idea why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could sit down and come up with like, 100 different theoretical classes of parts and teach a specific method for machining each one of those parts. You could have like, this is a block that is, this is a rectangular part that has just two operations, and then you could like teach them the strategy for camming that, and then you
Mm-hmm.
could go, okay, this is a block that has three operations, and teach them the strategy for camming that. And
Yeah.
just like, you could, if you really wanted to, systematically go through a bunch of different part classes. This is a round part with three operations and two cross holes, and this is how you approach it. But like, in the real world, parts don't always fit into those neat little things. And the true
Yeah.
value of a machinist is being able to bash your head into a wall until you get good working part, a good program with good speeds and feeds that
Yeah.
fit perfectly in the center of AJ's Venn diagram of cutting parameters, and everything just works.
Yeah. Except for the fact that these guys aren't going to be machinists, which is the other side of that equation. They're going to be engineers. And so,
In that case, engineers need to learn problem solving,
yes. Yeah. And that's kind of
because
the approach I've been taking. And it's because in education, and specifically, this is my number one problem with engineering when I was in school. And it's not the university's fault completely. If they want to have the right accreditations to be, engineering and all that kind of stuff, they have to have so many different classes. And so to fit an engineering degree in a 4-year program, you end up needing around like 150 hours of classes, which is a full load for all 4 years. And so, like, there's not much wiggle room where they can fit in some like practical classes. And so, because I've tried to get not CNC, CAD classes into the program my whole time I was there, and one, the professors didn't really know uh, CAD very well, and two, they would always say there's no available time slots in the schedule that we require that we can fit them into. My argument to that would always be, well, just make it an elective class and offer it, and then students who recognize the value in it can take it.
did you get electives in your program? Because I got zero electives. I had a couple things where it was like, you got two. Yeah, I had a
Mm-hmm.
couple things where it was like, here is a list of 20 classes, take five of them. But yeah, I never had an elective.
I had two.
Also, it took me 5.5 years to graduate, but
Yeah,
I had a full time job for most of it, and a wife and a kid.
yeah. It was. I could have two electives, and they were 1 hour each
Okay, yeah.
of credit. So it was like a 2 hour class. And I basically did production techniques and welding, which are the two classes I'm teaching. Um, Production techniques, which is the welding class, and then they had a machining class, which is turned into CNC machining. So, which actually, for those of you watching the video, this was my first part that I turned while I was at university. So we made this on a
Plumb Bob.
Grizzly. a grizzly lathe. Yeah, it's a plumb bob. So it's incredibly sharp because I was an idiot and made it too sharp.
I mean, that seems like exactly the thing a college student to do. I can go get my first part. Should I get my first part?
Sure.
Okay, this is for the video people.
But anyways, for those of you that can't see, it's a brass plumb bob with I want to say it's a stainless steel tip, but it might just be a steel tip. It hasn't rusted at all, so it probably is stainless. I don't have a magnet with me, but it's threaded into the end. Nice, a little hammer.
So, yep, little hammer. On the lathe, we just, turn straight, turn a taper, do a thread. On the hammer, we did, mill a flat, turn it over, mill a flat. And of course, this was basically all set up for us. Like, we did very little actual work on these. And then later, they made us come back and do a bunch of engravings on them that we had to hand program on I believe it was a TMOP or a TM2P, something in there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to hand program. You were supposed to hand program like a design, and a lot of people went all out and hand programmed some pretty like ornate things. I did a bunch of circles in a line, and it looks really impressive, but it's basically just the same circle over and over and over again, because I thought learning to hand program G code was stupid. And I kind of still agree with that.
Yeah. This is the box I welded in Production Techniques.
Very nice.
With the idea that, because I did the machining class first, and so the idea was I was going to make this box that I was going to have the plumb bob stick in, and I got the box all welded out. The last thing I didn't do, because I ran out of time, was I was going to cut it and split it into two halves, so a lid and a base. And then I was going to put wood on the inside and turn it and have it be a metal box with a wood inlay.
That'd be cool.
Which technically I could still do. And that's maybe a fun little side project I should finish out at some point.
It would be fun to have it up on end vertically and hang the plumb bob down. So it's like hanging on its string.
That would actually be really cool.
And then you don't have to cut up your pretty box.
Maybe that's what I intended all along, and it took me years to realize it. It's honestly a really good idea.
All right, well, I think we're off the rails. Shall we?
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
I have a plug. I keep forgetting to say this. If you have a business that makes physical products or offers a service that makes physical things, we would like to promote you on this podcast for free. Send me a message, and I will give you a free plug in the next episode the next episode after you send me a message. So if you would like free promotion, we will gladly shill for free. And now I'm playing the music.
You're playing the music, and I'm playing with a plumb bob.
Well, this is your cue to do the outro, so.
Yeah, I know. All right, enough going down memory lane. We've come to that part of the episode where we say goodbye. And before we say goodbye, we got to make sure that you go tell everyone you know about our podcast. So, those of you that are listening, go retell everyone as I get ink everywhere because I grabbed a pen and apparently it's got a busted tip. So, anyways, as I try not to touch my face and smear ink all over myself, we appreciate all of you that have listened to the podcast. And this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Design Me Everything.
Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
That too.
Oh, I hit the wrong